So what we're going to be doing is basically creating a couple of classes in our data access layer. The first one is basically going to write an information log for successful queries. And then for exceptions, it's going to create an error log. And how we're going to be testing this is we're going to eventually, when we're done adding all this code, we're going to run the app. We're going to go into the student index. And in our search box, we're going to key in the word throw because we're going to have specific code when that word is detected, it will simulate an error. So first thing we're going to do in data access layer, I'm going to add a class. And we're going to call this one. And if you want to copy the name, if you're afraid of typos, this is HandsOn3. It's school interceptor logging. So we're adding that. And then we have some code that we're going to use for that as well, which I have provided. And again, the purpose of this is to basically log good commands and also log our errors. So that is what it is doing. And then we're also going to create a class called School Interceptor Transient Errors. This is also going to go in our data access layer. And we're going to replace that code as well. So what we've done in here is we've overridden reader executing. And so this is where the code is coming into play to kind of test the error. So you can see we set throw transient errors to false, and then we check to see if it's tried the command more than once, or if it's tried it. And then also it's checking the string that we enter in the search to see if we keyed in the word throw. And then if we did, it is indicating that we should throw a transient error at that point. Another thing it is checking is to see if it's tried the command less than 4 times. Okay, so once it gets to 4, then we're creating a little dummy exception. And that little dummy exception is right down here. So we are simulating an error code, so we're setting it to 20. Because we're specifying it, it can really be whatever you want. And so this is actually how we are simulating an error. So again, quick overview of this process. When we go to the student index and we enter the word throw, we are creating a dummy SQL database exception for error number 20. And number 20 is a type known to be transient, and there are other numbers you could use. 64, 233, 10,053, etc. So 20 is not the only number you can use, but it's the easiest one for us to code. The code returns the exception to entity framework. instead of running the query and passing back the results. So the transient exception is actually returned 4 times, and after 4 times, it reverts to the normal procedure of passing the query along to the database. And because we are logging everything, you're actually going to see Entity Framework try to execute 4 times and then finally sending on the results. So the number of times that Entity Framework retries is obviously configurable, right? We have the 4 coded in here. I mean, you can change it to 10 or whatever you wanted if you wanted it to retry more times. Now, the reason that we picked 4 is because that is the default value for SQL database execution policy. The value that we enter into the search box will come through here in command parameters 0 and command parameters 1. So command parameters 0.value is basically pulling first name, and command parameters 1 is pulling last name. Okay, and then obviously when it finds throw, it's using that, but then eventually it will replace it with the actual things that we are using. So let's do a save all and run a little build. And then there's one more thing that we need to configure. We have to update our global ASAX file. And let's see. Here is our global ASAX file, so let's open that up. And then at the bottom here, this is where we're going to add DB intersection for the transient errors and the logging. And it's flagging that as an error because there's a couple of using statements we need at the top. So we basically tell it that we are using the data access layer and that we are also using the entity framework's interception. And we'll do a save all and run another build. And our next step is actually going to be to run our application. And we're going to do that in debug mode. In the next video, I'll cover that.